Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Roy's Tie-Dye Sci-Fi Corner. This is episode number 191, and this is a special broadcast that we are doing this evening, and it is Thursday. It is May 11th, and we're a few minutes after 7:30 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. And what we're going to be doing is we are actually going to be talking to the crew that is heading up the upcoming convention that is taking place in Long Island, which is known as Trek Long Island. So we're going to be welcoming them, as well as special guests that are going to be at this convention. So thank you for joining us, and I want to welcome some of the folks that are actually out there tonight. I see that Martin is joining us, and he is joining us from New York. Welcome, Martin. And I also see that Colin Curlis is joining us. Colin is joining us actually from the UK. And I see Sue is actually out there, and she's saying hello to everybody. She's joining us from Massachusetts. And also, let me see here. Yes. And that is the comments that I see that are being posted. And there will be more comments as we, plug along. So welcome, everybody. And looks like Martin is correcting me, saying he's in the Washington, D.C. for a few days. In fact, you know what, Martin, I did see your photos of the Enterprise that you took at the Smithsonian. So great seeing you out there. Thanks for joining, even in your travels. Much appreciated. And also just want to let everyone know, Sue is saying hello to Kavita, hello to Steph, and to Bonnie, and also to Edwin and Rachel. So just so you know.
Hi, John.
Hi.
So thanks for joining us, folks. It's great to have you out there. Well, here we are. And this event has been in the making, has been planned for quite some time. And now it is only less than 2 weeks away. It's really maybe
9 days. How many minutes?
I know you got the countdown going on the website, right?
I don't even look at it. I don't look.
So it is an exciting time. So just to introduce the guests that we have. So I'm going to start with Rachel Hasenauer-Thrower. She is our talent liaison for Trek Long Island. Also Edwin Thrower, who is the program director, and Stefanie Gangone, who is say that again, Steph?
Gangone.
Thank you, Steph. Just as a disclaimer, I will butcher, mutilate names, and I do it all the time. And
great trend.
Take attacks on mine because it's Belquist or Bielquist, and a lot of people say Bajelquist. So there you go. But anyway, with that, I want to just let everybody know that the website, again, if you have not had the opportunity to visit it, it is www.treklongisland.com. It is very intuitive. There's a lot of information there in regards to the events that are going to be taking place, the special guests that are going to be there, and also the different schedules that are going to be taking place during the course of the event of Trek Long Island. So if you have not had the opportunity, please go there to check it out. And it has a lot of information. So with that said, I would like to welcome one of the guests that's going to be at Trek Long Island. In fact, she was instrumental in having this prepared for us tonight and bringing everybody together. And that is Bonnie Moss, who we've actually had on the show before. And she was a personal friend of Leonard Nimoy. She's going to be sharing some very special memories of her friendship, as well as some of her collections, that she has and will be having displayed at the event and her discussions at the event. So Bonnie, I'd just like to welcome you first to the show tonight.
Thank you, Roy. And thanks for having me again. Obviously, there was no boycott after my first appearance. So that's positive. And at the risk of being repetitive, I will, just briefly say I really appreciated the invitation, Steph and Edwin, and making it possible for me to share a little bit of Leonard at Trek Long Island. I'm looking forward to it.
Us too.
I can't wait to meet you face to face. I haven't met you face to face.
No, the only person I've had to meet face to face has been Edwin so far.
Yeah.
Roy at Trek Conderoga?
Yes, at Trek Conderoga, yeah. And Rachel was in the vicinity, but we never, our stores did not align, yeah. So it'll be like old home week, although we've not been at home before, once we all get up there. So it'll be great.
No, it's going to be wonderful to bring everybody together. And, Bonnie, I've also talked about it too, because you were at Trek Ticonderoga and I was there and our paths didn't cross. So I'm really excited not only to meet you, but I'm really excited to hear, your discussion and sharing the information about your friendship with Leonard Nimoy, as well as a lot of the memorabilia that you've collected over the years. It's very special. It's very respectful. And it's definitely going to be, for me personally, one of the highlights of the event. So
there's so many highlights to be had looking at the lineup. So that's high praise indeed, Roy. I appreciate that. Unfortunately, I won't be able to bring much of my memorabilia because of plane rides and so forth. I did have a few things at Trek Ticonderoga that people enjoyed seeing, such as the award that Disney Studios gave Leonard, that is now in my possession. And I may be able to wear his watch. I do have one of his favorite watches. And it says a lot about Leonard that his favorite watch was not a Rolex, it was a Swatch. And Susan Nimoy confirmed that with me, that he always put on the Swatch watch rather than the dressier watches that he had. I do have several, and I do have a pair of ears from the original series that Leonard signed off on, but they're under my bed, and I don't mean to imply anything with that. Just that they were framed. What if those ears could talk? But anyway, I think it's a matter of if they were framed for me. Had I framed them, it would have been in a much smaller frame. And the person who did the framing was in California at the time and was the liaison to Leonard, and of course wanted to frame his signing off on them. These are the real deal. And it's in this like 3 foot by 4 foot frame. And I'm like, when it arrived on my doorstep, it was in a wooden crate. And I was going, oh my God, I expected a little box, And so there's no place I can hang that without pulling the plaster off the wall, And so I leaned it against things for a while, and now it's, until the next idea comes, that's where they reside. So that's a little bit about the memorabilia that unfortunately will not be there. But everyone has an open invitation to come to the museum, such as it is down here.
All the attendees of our convention.
Pardon?
You're flying us all down? Wow, Bonnie.
Yes.
Here live, folks.
Well, I can certainly. I'll see if I can rent some cots and and I'll make some popcorn, and it'll be a hoedown.
I'm there.
I sense a road trip is in order.
Honest to goodness, you wouldn't believe the people that have come in terms of fans. I mean, who made trips. My dear friend Jackie in England said, I want to see it. Jackie came over from England. My friend Christine Mao from Germany, who used to run a very popular Leonard Nimoy website called Beyond Spock. And she came from Germany and spent time with me and helped me organize the collection. My friend Melinda from Texas came up, and again, each has a crack at trying to organize this thing. It's better than it was, but it still has a long way to go. Natalie Markin and her sister Christy from the Washington D.C. area have come down and helped organize and do things. So it's a win for both of us. People get to see a lot of things up close and personal, and I get to kind of tame the madness because the collecting began when the show was still on the air. So do the math. I was the kid who did write the magazines and wrote the network and wrote, and back then, I think I mentioned this before, Roy, things weren't so proprietary.
Right.
The studios and the magazines and the networks would mail me crap, we're treasures now, but, because otherwise they'd throw it away. I mean, it was just stuff they didn't need once that the article or the promo appeared. So I'm very blessed to have been, I guess I'm old now, but very blessed to have been during that time when things were easier to come by and not quite so expensive or hard to obtain. And then I just built upon that. And of course, photographs are a large part of what I collected, stills. Again, the magazines would send me the photo they ran in TV Picture Life, on Leonard. The Boston Globe would send me the photo that appeared in the article that they interviewed Leonard with, And Leonard, to his great good credit, always loved ingenuity. I mean, he didn't like intrusiveness or overstepping boundaries, but ingenuity he appreciated. He would say, "Where'd you get this? And how'd you do that?" And he's going, "This is great. That you somehow navigated the system without stepping on any toes." So a lot of those photos will be seen in the presentation at Trek Long Island that I obtained through the media. And then photos I have of Leonard doing his other roles. I'm going to pay service to Leonard being multidimensional, in the talk. Certainly Trek will have its place, but his work before Trek, his work after Trek, his theater work, which was significant and really deserves a shout out for his diversity there. He did one-man shows. He did musicals. He did ensemble pieces. He was an incredible talent in several different genres and in several, before in front of and behind the camera. And so I think he was very unique in that regard, and his personality and his regard for people were just the icing on the cake.
Yeah, it definitely says a lot, Bonnie. And for me personally, too, when an interest of mine has always been when I've gone to different events to see different actors that are performing or not, or are on stage and telling about their times for doing, whether it be Star Trek. And as everybody knows, I'm a huge Space 1999 fan. I've always had an interest in finding out what they did prior to that or what they are going to be doing, because to me, there's a lot of interest in that, just because, we know the shows, the episodes so well that, they have been known from, but then it also gives a special insight into what they have done previously. And then to also see them as performers or actors or artists. So having the opportunity to have this special insight is really going to make this a very special time for, the fans of Leonard Nimoy. And we're very appreciative of it. And it's something to look forward to. And especially with, the time that has gone by. And as you were saying too, about these photos, a lot of, there's been photos that have been actually out there from, standard press photos that I'm sure that many of us are familiar with, but you actually have access to different individual photos that were taken for these specific magazines. And a lot of these images have not, probably been seen by the general public or have not been seen in a long time. So it's definitely going to give a lot of insight, and it's going to be something that, a lot of us are going to be looking forward to. So it's definitely going to be exciting to say.
Well, thank you, Roy. And I hope so. And it's going to be in two parts, which I initially was ambivalent about, but Edwin convinced me that it should be in two parts, that there was enough significant material there that would be of interest, so that even if you only ended up, due to other programming, only going to one part, you would still come away with something.
And the intermission is based around Bonnie's photo op, so we have to take her out for a photo op and then bring her back.
That's the real reason.
It was used to the frantic email for me. I told him I'm the storm before the calm. You're going to get all of this, and then when things get going, things will get better.
Bonnie, I don't want to steal your thunder about Leonard and everything, but I just want to share this story. When I was putting the program together, Bonnie said to me, I absolutely have to see Oded first. Please do not put me up against Oded because I have to see him. I went, oh, no. And she's like, what? I went, I've got you down for an interview at that time. And she's like, well, can you move me? Can you move me? And I'm like, well, I can if you want, but you're interviewing Oded on the main stage. and like her
You
jaw
don't
hit
know
the
what
ground.
initially came out of my mouth. I will not. I will not.
And as
It
we
was
were talking
wholly
about it,
something.
well, and if you recall, as you were talking about it, you said this is an omen, and she turned the zoom to the television, and the mummy was on television, and Oded was on the screen as we were actually talking about him. So if
Right.
that is a sign, I don't know what is.
I don't know, and I appreciate your great good faith in me in terms of asking other people questions. Of course, you'll be with me on that. But
I hate to add, you insisted that I be with you on the interview, but I'm sure Oded will be gentle with you, but I will be around, you know, if I'm needed.
well, you that may be in the first 30 seconds, so stay stay nearby. But yeah, interviewing Mike Westmore is also on the agenda as well as Oded. But that I have done things on a smaller scale. This is on a much larger scale. I mean, you know, Ticonderoga was a great experience, but this is larger and literally on a larger stage. So I'm going to have a big learning curve there. But I do hope people will be able to attend both, you know, both sections of this. I think, is there like a 10 or 15-minute break between the two, Edwin?
I'm actually giving you 5 minutes because I want to watch you run to photo ops. No, it's about 15 minutes.
No, you're going to make me choose between a bathroom break and my photo ops.
We're going to
That's
beam you there. We're beaming you there. You know that?
much appreciated. But hopefully both will be of interest. And of course, it's about Leonard and his diversity in his career, but also part of it is through the lens of our friendship. And it's not solely about that, but the friendship lends itself to perhaps some observations and experiences you wouldn't have just through the media, you know, things displayed.
Well,
and I will kind of oh, pardon.
Oh no, I was just gonna say that like you actually went through the slides with me and you kind of sort of pseudo rehearsed it, and that's when I said to you, this needs to be. You said, should I cut it down? I went, no, you can't, because it won't do it justice. You really have to talk about, and it's like I've been a Trek fan all my life, and I've never seen a talk like this. There is content, there are photos in this talk, and anecdotes about Leonard Nimoy that I have never heard, I didn't know. And if you're a huge fan of Star Trek, especially the original series, Bonnie is at 10:30 in Auditorium B on Saturday morning, May 20th. And it's going to be amazing. I strongly urge you to make her talk.
Thank you, Edwin. I hope I hope I do Leonard justice and you guys justice. And I appreciate the interest sincerely. And I appreciate it on Leonard's behalf. There'd be part of him that would be very with, you know, this type of thing still going on these years after his passing. And I'll leave it at that, but I'll facilitate a segue, and I appreciate all of your input and interest. Because I collected so much on both Spock and Leonard, people would always say, have you seen this? Have you seen that? Have you seen this? Have you seen that? And I got an email one evening several years ago from a friend in Scotland, Stevie Thompson Fitch, who I met at the 50th anniversary convention in Las Vegas. And he and I became fast friends. We're still in touch. He lives on a beautiful farm in Scotland. It's on my bucket list as I have an invitation there. And he said, Bonnie, you must see this person's work. You must. You are the person that will appreciate this. You must, you must, you must. This is coming from Scotland. And I'm like, okay. And he sends me all these beautiful posts from Kavita that the two of them had been in contact before I came on. And I went, she's captured him. She's captured him. She's captured Spock in ways I had not seen. And I have seen my share of artwork as well as photography on Spock, and I was so impressed. And now Stevie's quite proud of himself, Kavita, that, you know, he was the conduit here. But I would strongly encourage people to check both Kavita's talk or panel. I'm not sure what she's doing, but most definitely her table where her work will be. I have 4 of her of her prints, and they're stunning. So if Kavita's next up, I just gave the perfect segue.
That was a perfect lead in, Bonnie. So thank you for that.
Bonnie, could I just ruin that segue?
Yeah,
Could I just ruin that segue for a moment? You
Oh,
forgot
well, you would.
Michael Westmore. Michael Westmore,
yes.
Makeup Man. And then you can segue.
Okay. Well, I did allude to interviewing Michael Westmore, which I will be doing too. And I met, and he's a friend as well. And the last time I was in LA, I was really honored to receive a dinner invitation from him. Talk about a special day. I had lunch with Susan Nimoy and I had dinner with Michael Westmore. Doesn't get much better than that. Mm-hmm. So he has very graciously agreed to appear virtually at the convention. And in fact, he sent me a few pieces of paper that had his bio and his resume and things like that on it in case it would be helpful. That's just what a nice guy he has. And then he had on a little paper clipped, a little stick-em note that said, "Bonnie, ask me anything." So, I mean, how generous is that? It's, he gives you material and then he says, and I did talk to him on the phone a bit later after that. And I said, well, does that include if I ask you your sign or your favorite color or all of that? He just started laughing and he said, "Bonnie, anything. So, I appreciate his trust in that, although obviously there will not be any untoward inquiries made. But I'm looking very much forward to interviewing with Mike, as he is. Steph, he is very much appreciated the invite too, and enjoys this because he's older now and he's more, I won't say homebound, but he doesn't travel like he used to. So these types of things are a lot of fun for him. So
I got to get into those rooms. I have to find time to get into those rooms and see everybody. How am I going to do it?
I don't. We'll dump everything on Edwin.
Oh, wow, good idea. Okay. Edwin, close your ears for just 1 second.
La la la! I can't hear you.
Edwin, all the work, and I'll be at all the panels.
Okay, and now we will take a little jaunt backwards and pick up with the artist known as Kavita. It's kind of like Madonna, Cher, Kavita.
Hi, Kavita.
Hi, Roy.
How are you? Thank you for coming on the show, and thank you again to Bonnie for relaying the information and having you connect to come on the show. So, tell us about your career. Wow, just seeing a sampling of your work is truly amazing.
Well, in terms of my time in Star Trek, it started about 4 or 5 years ago now. Bonnie, how long have we known each other?
At least 4, I would say.
Yeah.
At least
okay.
4.
So I guess it's been about 5 years or so because I think I was doing my Star Trek paintings for almost a year before Bonnie and I met each other. I say met with quotations here because Bonnie and I, as we were chatting about before, she and I have been friends now for 4 years and have never met each other in person. In fact, today is the first time I'm hearing Bonnie's voice.
Yes.
So, right?
Yes. But yes, you're getting to hear the y'all and all. So there you go.
So, but you asked about my career there. I've been an artist pretty much all my life. But about 5 years ago, being a lifelong Trekkie, about 5 years ago, I decided that I wanted to do one painting of Spock. I had a spot for it on my wall. Like, I want to do this painting. I wanted this size, etc. And so then I proceeded to spend 2 years looking at photos.
Wow.
To try to make a decision. 2 years. So 2 years of looking at photos. I finally looked at my husband and I said, I can't do it. He said, what? I said, there's so many images of Leonard Nimoy's Spock. And I said that, where his facial expression, his body language, they're all very interesting to me, and I can't choose just one. And my husband looked very, very confused because he looked at me and said, so why don't you just do a whole bunch of them? And the look on my face was like, this had never occurred to me. Right? Yeah. I said, I can do that. And that's how the body of my work started. So I started doing painting after painting of Leonard Nimoy's Spock, because he is my favorite character, and he's my favorite character philosophically. And I was mentioning before, we got on air that I now have over 70 Star Trek paintings that I've done over the last 5 years. About half of those are of Spock. So I always jokingly say, my husband's the one who suggested I paint a whole bunch of them, and I think he lives with regret. So,
now that he has a wall of Trek, yeah.
Yes, you know how you said you had the ears under your bed?
Mm-hmm.
So one thing my husband said was, you can't put any of them in the bedroom. He
wants no distractions and no competition.
None whatsoever. Right. So, but I've been painting for about a year at this point. Start for my Spock series, and I decided that I got so much joy out of creating these pieces, which I was just doing for myself, that I wanted to share it with other Trekkies, people who would appreciate this. So I created an Instagram account, which I'd never had before, and I did it anonymously. So I put it up as Commander Spock UFP, and that's still my Instagram handle. But I didn't put my name on it, and I didn't put my face on it, right? In fact, if you go to my Instagram, you'll see an image of Spock that I've done. You won't see my face on the actual, image of the profile. But even in my postings, I didn't show my face. And it was because I will mention that I'm also a yoga teacher. I run a yoga studio, and I have a lot of students. And they all know I'm tricky, but I knew that they would want to support me. And so even if they weren't interested in the work, they would follow me. And I didn't want that. I only wanted people who really loved the work and loved the character and it had meaning to them to follow this account, because I wanted them to get joy out of that particular thing. So I hid my identity so my students wouldn't follow me unless they were Trekkies. Mm-hmm. And very soon the account started building, and I started getting messages from fans going, can I buy your painting? And every single time I'd say, I'm sorry, but, these are labors of love. They're not for sale. I'm sorry. And I'd repeat this every time I'd get a message. And then one day I got a message on Instagram from a friend of Leonard Nimoy's, and it wasn't Bonnie, right? And he wanted to buy the paintings as well. And I told him the same thing. I said, I'm really sorry, but these are labors of love and they're not actually for sale. But at that point in time, I started feeling selfish. I started feeling like I started putting these things up for Trekkies to get joy out of this. And now they wanted it in their own homes. And I was saying no. And so I wasn't feeling so great about that. But I'm a very above the board type of person. So I also thought to myself, I'm not willing to sell any of these pieces unless it's actually officially approved, because I didn't want to do anything under the table. So I ended up contacting CBS, and I really didn't want to. The reason I didn't want to is I really felt like, the moment I contacted them, I'd be on their radar.
Yeah.
And they'd be watching. They'd be
watching, right? And at the same time as I thought I'd be on their radar, I also thought they wouldn't give me the time of day. It's a bizarre juxtaposition to think those two things at the same time. Mm-hmm. So, but I thought, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to be above board. So
I lost you, Kavita. Hold on one.
Can you still hear me now?
A moment. I apologize.
Okay.
I hear you.
Roy can't.
I hear you.
Yeah. Actually, you're frozen, Roy. Everybody else is okay.
Everybody else is fine.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. So can you hear me again, Roy?
Roy?
It's all right. Just carry on, Kavita.
Roy will catch up eventually.
Wow.
Don't worry.
He'll jump in when he's ready.
Hi guys, Sci-Fi
Keep going.
Corner.
Yeah.
Can you hear
Don't
me?
worry about the iceberg. Just keep going.
Boy,
Okay.
showing us his ventriloquistic skills.
All right. Well, what I was saying is I contacted CBS, and within 12 hours they contacted me back. And 12 hours, I was shocked.
Wow.
And how can we help you? And I said, well, I'm an artist. This is what's going on. People are asking to buy the pieces. I would actually like approval to do this, etc. And I sent them 4 photos of the paintings I'd done. I actually brought one of the paintings here to show you guys.
Wow.
And look at that painting in the background.
No. Oh my God.
Oh, wow.
This was one of the paintings, the images that I sent them to say, this is what I'm doing, and this is what people would like to purchase. And within a month, I had a contract. They licensed me, and I had a contract. So I was not at all expecting anything like this. And in fact, it really freaked me out when this was happening because I felt overwhelmed. I didn't know how I was going to handle this. Right? So this is how the journey started.
Congratulations on that. That's amazing.
Yes, that is quite a testimony to your cachet for CBS, who is not a CBS is not a pushover in many respects. And I'm sure you'll talk about this more. I'm sorry, Rory. I must know. What do you think made the difference after that initial contact? Because I'm sure for every person that contacts CBS, there are 50 that hear nothing or get a goose egg, or aside, obviously your work was quality work and respectful work, but that was amazing to have that turnaround you did.
12-hour turnaround, first of all, for even just responding back. And I think I was a little lucky where this was concerned, because at the time, first of all, the merger hadn't occurred between, Viacom and CBS and whatnot. And being in Canada, so I should mention I'm in Canada. So at that time, they used to use, CBS used to have a licensing company that would deal with stuff on their behalf. So when they got the email from me saying, I'm looking to become licensed, they sent an email to the licensing company, and the licensing company immediately contacted me. So I kind of feel like maybe in the US, maybe I wouldn't have had as great a turnaround time, because at the time that I became licensed, I think I was one of 11 people in Canada who was licensed by CBS for Star Trek.
Wow.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think after that, then it was my work that kind of pushed things quickly.
Took it to the next level. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, because that's an amazing story. It truly is.
Yeah, it really, really is. I mean, something like that, you don't hear stories like that, especially happening so quickly within a 12-hour time frame. My God.
Yes. Yes. You hear a lot of I was shut down by CBS. You don't hear a lot about, I heard from them in 12 hours, CBS, So
and I have to say,
exist, right?
Well, there's that. But I do have to say, I've been working with CBS and Viacom now for and Paramount for 4 years at this point, and I have to say that I actually enjoy working with them. I think that they actually are really good to, as a generality, they're really good to their licensees. They're easy to, the people I've talked to at CBS are easy to talk to. The one of the ones who she's now in charge of me as a licensee, I found that she went out of her way to make sure that we didn't feel like we were in this massive company that we'd get lost in. As a person, as a human being, and I've really appreciated that, actually. But my fear of it before I contacted them was that they were this massive company, and like I said, they were going to be watching.
Right.
No, especially now, with technology the way it is, and how you can feel like you're just a number. So that's hearing something like that is very reassuring too. So thank you for sharing that.
Not at all.
I didn't have the opportunity to share some of the folks that are out there. So I want to say hi to May. May Barr is actually out there. She said hello, but then she also had to run. So I just wanted to put that out there. My wife, Shari's actually out there. She's downstairs. She's tuning in. So hi, hun. Dave Rash is out there. And today is Dave's birthday. So just
Happy birthday, Dave.
Hey.
So thanks for joining us, Dave. And Dave, of course, will be doing his The Outer Limits discussion at the convention as well. Captain Phil is also out there. He is actually in Long Island, and that's Phil Merkel. So he was just commenting. He was commenting about Allan's book, which we'll be getting to shortly. So just want to say hi to Captain Phil. And also, I see that. And again, I'm terrible with names. Yasmi Harris is out there. Yasmi, welcome to the show. And let me see here. Also, Sean Dempsey is out there. Sean, thanks for joining. Sean was actually just recently in Calgary with me. We were at the Space 1999 convention, and I think he was down south celebrating his daughter's graduation. So welcome. Thanks for being out there, Sean. So just wanted to catch up on a few folks that are watching and saying hello and admiring your work, Kavita, as well as acknowledging Bonnie earlier too. So thanks everyone for being out there.
Indeed.
So yes, this is going to be a lot of fun, Kavita, and definitely looking forward to seeing your work in person. In fact, Sue was actually commenting too about seeing your photos. She said, Roy, Bonnie Moss's collection of treasures from Leonard Nimoy is amazing. The items that she has collected over the years is astounding, but her treasure trove of memories is what is truly special. And then she also commented, Kavita, about your painting, and I'm going to put that up right now. And she wrote, Roy, could you please ask Kavita if she can talk about the beautiful painting of Kirk, Scott, and McCoy from Star Trek The Wrath of Khan a little closer, please?
Sure.
And thank you, Sue.
I'm in process. This is almost finished, but I still have a lot more of the background to do. So I'm going to kind of move this a little sideways. So is that a good view of it there? Okay. So
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So I'm working on this one. I'm actually thinking I'll probably get this done maybe by this weekend.
That'll time out.
Yeah. So it's always interesting to see how long a piece takes. I get that question a lot, like how long does a painting take? And my famous answer is it depends. And I kind of think about myself as the messenger. The painting decides what it wants to do, and I'm just there to take its message onto the canvas. So some paintings, the turnaround time on it is 2-3 days, and I'm finished an entire painting. And other ones, it's 2-3 weeks, like of hours and hours and hours of work that I'm doing. So you never know, right, as to how long it's going to take. But they're all labors of love, so it just takes the time it takes.
I just have to say, Kavita, like I've seen so much Star Trek artwork, and like sometimes like on some of the book covers or some of the other artwork out there, I look at it and I have a real hard time figuring out who it's supposed to be. And then I saw your artwork, and it's like, I think it's the first time that I've seen something that, quite frankly, is so perfect. It truly is. And I just wonder, because I noticed recently, I've been following your work, and I've noticed recently that you branched off into doing the ships. So this may be a sort of naive question, but do you find it easier to paint people or ships or both?
I think I find it easier to paint people. I have one of my ships here that I just finished. I'll just bring this to show you guys, because Edwin knows about the ships.
Excited.
So this one is a painting of the Defiant.
Wow.
Yeah. So this was my most. It wasn't my most recent ship. My most recent ship is actually of the HMS Bounty, as it's coming to land.
Wow.
But I actually would say that I find it easier to paint people, and one of the reasons is that what generally drives me, besides my fascination with color. But what generally drives me is the question of what is it to be a noble human being? And so with people, it's immediately that conversation is immediate. It's a person. What is it like to be this person with their story, trying to be noble, sometimes succeeding at it, but sometimes, like when I did my Khan painting, it's about failing at it, right? I assume Khan wants to have the nobility that all of us want to have, but he doesn't. He kind of misses the mark, right? With a ship, there's a step removed from it. So you have to actually consider, what is the ship's story? What has it allowed to happen for the people involved to then have that conversation about nobility? And so I think that is part of the reason I find it easier to paint people. The other reason I find it easier to paint people is ships are very precise. They're hard lines, very precise. You know, the person who designed the Voyager, Rick Sternbach. I don't know if you guys know of Rick. Rick, he designed the USS Voyager, and he came to chat with me in Vegas a couple years back. And he said, I've seen your work everywhere. And he was telling me how fascinated he was by my work with people, because he said, I have no idea how to draw people and paint people. And he said, it did get better when someone said to him, people are just organic machines. And he said, when they said that, I was like, oh, I could get that. So I do the opposite of what Rick does. He tries to see people as organic machines. I try to see machines, ships and whatnot, as mechanical people.
Right.
The reverse, the opposite. Yeah. Sue wanted to say thank you for showing your painting close up, and she commented you captured the faces and the essence of that emotional scene perfectly.
Thank you, Sue.
And I have to say, Kavita, when I saw the first painting that you did, the one that you were showing of Leonard Nimoy, I was trying to think of what scene that was coming from, just from his face and his angle and the way he was looking. And what immediately, and you can tell me if I'm wrong or right, I'm curious, but what immediately came to me was the scene in The Naked Time when he was talking to Nurse Chapel, and she was telling him, Spock, how she felt, and he was trying to capture that moment. And I was just curious.
So that's not the one that it comes from. I'm actually trying to remember the episode, but it wasn't that one. And the reason, I'm going to show you the painting one more time. Look at his eyes. The name of that painting, I ended up calling it Pure Logic. But there's an intensity behind the way in which he looks. And the reason I say, I know for a fact it's not from that episode, which you're guessing for, is that one of the things that really shows up in him in that episode is the vulnerability. And that vulnerability does not show up in this image. I'll just show you his eyes here.
Okay.
And in fact, there's something interesting about this painting and this piece.
Oh, that's season 1.
Right. And what's interesting about this painting, it's kind of like paintings. I'm not saying it's the same as Mona Lisa, but the way if you move around, the Mona Lisa looks at you no matter where you are. This one does it too. So no matter where you are, he's always looking at you.
Is that the reason why your husband doesn't want pictures in your room?
Yeah, another argument for not in the bedroom, right? Yeah.
Martin commented and was wondering if it was from Amok Time.
Amok Time.
Yeah. It was from Amok Time. Good job, Martin.
Nice.
Good job. Yeah. I was thinking it was a season 1 episode. I
did. Yeah, I thought season 1.
Yeah. But I mean, you just caught everything about him in that. It is just amazing. So our compliments.
Kavita, I thought you did phenomenal work with Nichelle of The Kiss and Mira Uhura. And I just wondered, because I saw the photos, could you tell us a bit about your interactions with Nichelle and how she received your artwork? It was, again, phenomenal pieces.
Thank you. So Nichelle is one of those people that I'm really happy I got to know. And she was she the first? I think she was the first crew member from the original series that I actually got to meet in person. And I have to admit that sitting and chatting with her, when she gave me a hug and we were talking and whatnot, it really felt like sitting and talking to my grandmother.
Oh.
You know? There was that familiarity, there was that affection, there was that kindness, and there was the sense that when you sat and you chatted with her, that she was very much focused on the conversation that was taking place between the two of you, as opposed to, I see a million fans, and so, right? She was apparently very taken with the work, and when she saw the painting that I had done that was for her last convention, she didn't know that I had done it for her last convention. I just showed her a photo of it, and she immediately said, "I want a print of that." And I said, "Don't worry, you'll get one." That's all I said to her. But from there, the request came in. Could you do these two particular pieces? One of the Kiss and one of her from the Mirror Mirror universe. And it was left to me to decide what I was doing, like the actual image I was going to work with and that type of thing. And so that was something that made made for an interesting, decision-making process for me. So with the Kiss, I had to decide what moment do I want to capture here? Do I want to capture the moment where there's the struggle between the two characters, right? Resisting of the moment. Do I want to capture the moment where there's a giving into this kiss that occurs? Like, what moment is important in this historical piece? And for the Mirror Mirror universe piece that I did, so it was the Mirror Mirror Uhura, the question was, what do I want to say about her? And I mean, Uhura was a strong character for her time and everything else, and we see her strength actually, I think, increase more and more as the series goes along and goes into the movies, etc. And so for me, it was, okay, she's a strong character, but how do I portray that strength? And so I played with the idea that there's a scene where she's on the bridge, right after she's kind of tangled a bit with Sulu. And she's just kind of standing. She's got her arms back like this. I don't know if you guys can kind of picture that. She's got her arms back, Yeah. And I thought to myself, do I want to portray the strength through the playfulness, where I could be in this environment and still be playful and joke around? And I realized, no, actually, the nobility I see is her willingness to step up and do what needs to be done. And that's why I chose the image I did for that Mirror Mirror piece, where that scene, which is just her standing, she's got the knife in her hand down by her side, is a piece where she's willing to take out this woman who's just come into the transporter room, and she's willing to do this, even though I'm sure that in the aftermath of that would have been difficult for her to have to process, to have to deal with. So every single one of my paintings, I really try to go through this, which is how does nobility show up in this character? What is the important thing that I want to say about what is going on in the scene with this person if they were a real human being, right? As opposed to I'm just simply painting a scene that came from the show.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Cool. It's very cool.
For essence.
Sure.
Yeah. Very cool.
And I just wanted to say, without hijacking the interview, not for nothing, next year's the 40th anniversary of Search for Spock. And have you done Uhura's scene from that where she's holding the phaser? I was actually trying to look up to see, because somehow my brain is telling me you've done that, but I can't recall, to be perfectly honest.
And it's where she says, "This is fantasy."
Exactly. Yeah.
That one? Yes. No, I haven't done that. Yeah.
I think that would be great. Obviously, the destruction of the Enterprise. That would be.
Yes. Yes. There are a few images that I can think of from the Search for Spock, which I think would be really quite interesting to paint over time. There's one scene that I've considered doing, because the image and the thought process of the feeling that went into the scene is so important to me. And it's the scene where T'Pau, the priestess, is standing, and she's got both of her hands out and, on one hand on Spock and one hand on McCoy, and she's actually performing the ceremony to reinfuse the katra. And I think it's such a powerful scene. That's one of the ones I'd like to do from The Search for Spock.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's definitely a powerful moment because everybody's intention, is concentrating on that moment of what's happening, and it's almost like life and death. Is McCoy going to be the way he was? Is Spock going to be back because back from where he was? And
yes,
it's the whole movie is leading up to that special moment. So yeah,
yes.
that would be a wonderful moment to capture.
Absolutely.
So yeah, we're definitely looking forward to seeing you in person. This is going to be amazing. So thank you for sharing. And we also have to say thank you to your husband. My God, because it sounds like he really he deserves a huge thank you as well too. Because
indeed. And he'll be with me, out there with you guys. So you guys will get to meet him then.
Cool.
That's right. We're going to bring cookies. Okay.
Okay.
He works for cookies. He works for cookies.
Yes, he definitely works for cookies. He's very bribable when it comes to cookies and bread.
Okay.
So,
we'll try to indulge him.
I want to bring on our third guest. Now, our third guest is actually tuning in via, I'll say, simulcast. So, and let me just put up an introduction slide. And folks may know him. If you remember back in the day, this book that I'm putting up is the Star Trek Compendium. And this is a book that I actually remember the day I got this book back in 1981. It was at a Walden bookstore. I was probably about, 14 years old at the time. And when I got this book, and you can see how, taped and rattled it is, but still intact. And when I got this was like gold. This was Star Trek gold for me because this was the days prior to the internet. We couldn't go on Google. We couldn't look up episodes. And it was basically any type of material that was out that we had to go by. So I want to welcome Allan Asherman. Allan, welcome. Whoop, Allan, I got to turn up the volume. Got to make sure you can be heard. Let's try that again. That was my fault. Try it again.
Hi, thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome. Welcome. And thanks for joining us, Allan. It's great to have you on.
Well, let me tell you a bit about myself and my accomplishments here and why I'm going to be at this convention. I'm a lifelong science fiction fan. I was born in Brooklyn. And in 1966, I went on a train and traveled to Cleveland, Ohio to attend my first World Science Fiction Convention, TriCon. And because I was there, I got to see Star Trek before it was even aired on television. Gene Roddenberry had brought 2 pilots, and I saw both of them. And it was an incredible experience because none of us in the audience could believe this was a television show. Each pilot screamed like a feature film, and it did not make fun of science fiction. It did not make light of anything connected with science fiction. It was good, valid drama, and the physical photography, effects, acting, direction, photography, everything were just simply beautiful. And we all went home from that convention telling everybody we knew who was the science fiction fandom, you must watch Star Trek. You've got to watch it. Well, I came home and it was very uneventful in Brooklyn, let's say, except that in 1967 to 1970, a fanzine called Spockanelia was published in Brooklyn by Deborah Langston and Shirley Summerford. And that lasted 5 issues, and I did some artwork for it, at least one cover and one article called The Most Unforgettable Humanoid I'd Ever Met, which was an article on Spock, on a journalist meeting and interviewing Mr. Spock. And it was one of my first jabs at writing, and I've since gotten my BA in journalism and have done a lot of writing. In 1967, I wrote an article in Castle of Frankenstein magazine, number 11, that was about Star Trek. And I had to argue with the publisher to print it because Star Trek was about to be canceled. And he said, well, nobody's going to be interested in the show for this long. And I argued, and eventually he printed it. And of course, it's one of the first, if not the first, articles about Star Trek that appeared in a magazine, a professionally published magazine. And I'm very proud of doing that. And
that has to be pretty amazing,
also,
Allan, in regards to doing something like that, because, I mean, what a lot of people don't remember is Star Trek was threatening to be canceled every season, right? From at the end of the first season and then the second season, at least the first two seasons. Unfortunately, sadly, it happened in the third, but there were strong letter writing campaigns, and I'll even say almost like protests for Star Trek to remain on the air. So the fact that
the first time was actually mounted by Harlan Ellison, who got a number of people behind him called the Committee, and they were all of the science fiction writers who hoped to write scripts for Star Trek. And they sent a letter out to people telling them to call NBC and protest the cancellation of Star Trek, and that kept it on. They were going to take it off the air right after Conscience of the King was aired, number 13.
Wow.
And that would have been quite horrible. And we never would have had all of the things that we have now concerning Star Trek. And of course, Paramount and CBS would never have had this enormous franchise.
Right.
Well, in 1976, I got involved with writing for something called the Star Trek Giant Poster Book. And that was printed in conjunction with the person named Ron Barlow, who ran a store in Manhattan called the Federation Trading Post. And it was because of my participation in that, and incidentally, one of the other writers for the poster book was Doug Drexler, who will also be represented at the convention, being interviewed virtually with Michael and Denise Okuda. Mm-hmm. And also on the staff was Jeff Mandel, writing for the giant Star Trek poster book. And Jeff later went on to become the art director for an absolutely wonderful series that was canceled far too soon, Space Above and Beyond. Mm. And if you don't know it, familiarize yourself with it. You'll love it. And after the Star Trek poster book, I wrote a series of that lasted only 3 issues called The Final Frontier for Brill and Waldstein, who had previously published The Monster Times, for which I also wrote. And I quit that after 3 issues because Brill and Waldstein admitted to me they had never taken out a license to do it. And not wanting to work on anything unauthorized, I just quit. The year before I started writing for The Final Frontier, Hallmark Mint, a private mint, hired me to design a Star Trek commemorative medallion. And it had Kirk and Spock on the front, 2 portraits, and the Enterprise on the back. And it was published in silver. They had a very limited gold edition, gold-plated edition, and most of them were brass. And you can still find them every once in a while. They're still auctioned off from time to time. And in 1981, I was invited to a meeting, actually in 1980, I was invited to a meeting at Simon & Schuster because a freelance writer had submitted a book to them called The Complete Book of Star Trek. And they didn't know anything about Star Trek, so they wanted experts to look over the manuscript. And I went to the meeting, looked at the manuscript, found a lot of errors. The first one, the most glaring one, was 2001: A Space Odyssey, produced by Stanley Kramer. Well, of course, this is not true. It was Stanley Kubrick. The second one, I opened to a random page and found The Enemy Within, written by Richard Maybaum. And of course, it was Richard Matheson who wrote it.
Right.
Well, at about this point, the editor said, well, could you look at some of the other pages? And I kept finding error after error. And she finally looked at me and said, would you like to write this book? And I said, heck yes. And I took it on, not knowing how it would be done, because this was before the internet. Fortunately, I had a lot of friends who collected Star Trek scripts. I had made hundreds of notes on little index cards about Star Trek. And I also collected Star Trek 35 millimeter clips, which I had bought from Gene Roddenberry's company, Lincoln Enterprises. So I was able, from the clapboard shots, to get a picture of what the production order of the series was. I was able, thanks to two friends who photographed the end credits of each episode from the television screen at home, I was able to go to their house and use a jeweler's loupe and frame by frame copy each credit for each Star Trek episode. And that was the very beginning. And I watched the episodes as they were rerun, took copious notes. And the result, after a lot of work, was the Star Trek Compendium. And I had a wonderful time doing it. And I'm very glad that people bought it. And I'm even more glad that people loved it. And it's been called, it was advertised by Simon & Schuster as the most thoroughly researched and complete Star Trek reference work ever published. And I have no choice but to agree with that. It's a wonderful compliment.
Well, I have to say, Allan, because
by two other books. The two other books I did for Simon & Schuster on Star Trek. One was the Star Trek interview book, and the other was the making of Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. And for The Wrath of Khan, I had submitted a proposal to do the book, and they told me I only had 2.5 weeks to write it from start to finish, because that was publicity for getting publicity on the film before it was issued, and I managed to do it. But I think my favorite effort was the Star Trek interview book, because I got to talk to people not only who appeared in front of the camera, but the people who made the show, the people who photographed it, the people who acted it, and the people who directed it, the people who wrote it, the people who scored it musically, the sound effects people. And it was very enlightening, and I felt honored to know these people and to have talks with them, and for them to confide in me what motivated them to contribute to Star Trek in the amazing ways that they did. Particularly since, in a lot of instances, the money they received wasn't the highest in the industry. They didn't have much of a deadline for their work. And yet, the series got done episode by episode. It was simply amazing. One of the most interesting people I met there was Robert Justman, who had started out in the industry as an assistant director in 1953 on the Adventures of Superman television series. And that was dear to me because The Adventures of Superman was the series that got me interested in science fiction and comic books in the first place. And I have also worked at DC Comics, first on their editorial staff in the 1970s. And then I went back later after I did more freelance work and I wanted a more secure job. And I became their librarian for 18 years, their librarian and historian.
Wow.
And if anybody has any questions they want to ask me right now, I'm open to them.
No, in fact, I'll open it up to questions from the folks that are out there. I think it's just amazing, though, because I mean, in the effort that you put into actually recording the details of the episodes, because like I said, I remember when that book had come out, I had purchased it at a Walden Books. It was on a Saturday afternoon. And I was so excited to see a material like that because, to have an episode guide, I mean, was, I think, if I remember correctly, the Making of Star Trek by Stephen Whitfield at the time that came out, it only included the first 2 seasons, and the episodes that were listed in the back of the book were in the order that they were shown on, that they were televised. It wasn't the production order. And to have that extra insight into the stories, to see that when they actually shot those episodes, and what immediately comes to mind was with the Corbomite maneuver being in May of 1966. So the show had premiered in September. So obviously then there's, you know, the 4 months that they had, you know, before production. But then also in the book, you had listed, I believe, like the original title of the episodes. And then you went into also extra detail about the actors, about the guest stars that appeared on the show of the specific episodes. So it was kind of interesting to see, again, you know, actors and their history and maybe different roles that they had over the years, and then eventually seeing them in Star Trek. So it was pretty cool.
I would say that as thrilled as I was to read the making of Star Trek, it was the lack of information in that book that spurred me on to want to write a book of my own about Star Trek. I wanted to know about how the series evolved.
Yeah.
Why were the costumes different in the first two pilots?
Right.
Who shot that beautiful series of action photos that happened in the middle of the pilot and before the series was in active production? Where everybody had those big round collars, and Spock had a huge collar that stood up around half his neck.
Yeah,
and they were posing like 1950s spacemen in front of a model of the Enterprise, and Kirk and Spock and Yeoman Rand, because those were the only ones who were cast at that time, were holding flashlights instead of ray guns, because the ray guns hadn't been made yet.
Right.
And except that Kirk was holding the phaser rifle from Where No Man Has Gone Before, which had been made. And there was nothing in the making of Star Trek II that bridged the gap to me of how the series evolved into what it became. There were some memos, yes. There was some talk of Gene Roddenberry's input about certain things, and Dorothy Fontana's input about certain things, but there was no cohesive picture of what caused Star Trek to become Star Trek and why it was so influential on television. And that's what I wanted to communicate. And I'm very happy to hear from people who read my book and still read it that I did communicate it. It's thrilling to be a part of something that's so wonderful.
No,
and that you love so much.
Absolutely. And then these are the types of questions you'll be asked. And this is the type of information that will be disseminated when you're appearing at Trek Long Island next week. So I know a lot of people, including myself, are going to be very excited to see you, to talk to you about this, because there's a lot of information. And that was a special time too. And to your point, I mean, one example, you were just talking about the uniforms with the raised collars, how Kirk and Spock had the gold braid wasn't the braid, it was a solid, you know, braid around their uniform, because the transitioning hadn't gone completely from the second pilot to the, you know, the original series uniforms that would be used in production. So it's information like that, you know, we can ask and inquire about. Just to let you know, there's a couple questions that are coming in. I see that Winsome Andrews is out there. Winsome, welcome to the show. Winsome is asking a question for Allan. What happened to the book you were writing after Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan?
It was a very aptly titled book. It was called The Star Trek That Never Was. And the topic was going to be all of the scripts and outlines that were purchased for production in the original Star Trek series, but were never produced. And there were some scripts by Theodore Sturgeon, Norman Spinrad, some very, very good people, John Meredith Lucas.
Wow.
Unfortunately, I wrote the book. I annotated each script and each outline that I was able to get. The book was printed. The book was in the warehouse. It was going to be distributed within 2 days. And Gene Roddenberry killed the book and ordered it, and Simon & Schuster ordered every copy pulped. I myself do not have a copy of that book except for the manuscript that I submitted to them. I have a copy.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
The reason he did that was that there was a writer's strike in California, and he was in the position of having to get scripts for the series that was in production at that point. And the only thing he could decide to do was to take some of those unproduced ideas and film them.
Mm.
And he couldn't do that if there was a book out there outlining everything that was in them. So, I don't really hold it against him for doing that, because he was very nice to me when I was doing my other projects, particularly the interview book. And I interviewed him on the first day of production of Star Trek: The Next Generation. He actually found time to talk to me for almost 2.5 hours that day.
Wow.
And it was wonderful, absolutely wonderful. But that was it. That's my answer to that question. There are a couple of cover proofs circulating, and that's it. You won't see anything else about that destroyed copy.
Right.
And I've never found any evidence of that.
Gotcha. Sue is asking, Roy, can you please ask Allan what is his most treasured memory that he experienced while writing the compendium?
I didn't travel to California when I wrote the compendium. I was doing it all from Brooklyn and New Jersey and wherever my friends lived who had collections that I could go and see and read scripts and stuff like that to get material for the book. So my real wonderful memories came from writing the subsequent books, primarily the Star Trek interview book. I would say that I have two really wonderful memories of all of those books combined. The first was meeting Leonard Nimoy in his office and spending an entire day with him and talking very informally about Star Trek and what it meant to him. And it was right after Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan had been released. And I found him to be a wonderful, gentle human being, very talented photographer, very philosophical person. And I just loved talking to him. And I had an astounding coincidence to bring to him too. There used to be people in Brooklyn who had a club that they met at somebody's house and discussed episodes of Star Trek. And one night we met and we broke up at about 3 a.m. Joan Winston was there, Elise Rosenstein was there, a lot of the people from the original committee of the first Star Trek convention in New York. We all loved the show, and I found myself at 3 a.m. out in a very dangerous section of East Brooklyn, many miles from where I lived, trying to hail a taxi cab. And I hailed the first cab that passed by. The cab stopped, picked me up. I got in. I looked at the card that listed the name of the cab driver, and the man's name was Irving Nimoy. And I asked him, "Are you any relation?" And he said, "I'm his cousin." And I spoke to Leonard about this, and I told him the story, and he said, "Oh my God, I can't believe that."
Crazy.
Wow.
Wow.
He had a laugh about that. My second wonderful memory was of DeForest Kelley. Kelley was a very wonderful but private person. He did not want to mix any discussion of Star Trek as a business with his home life. And so he did not meet me at home. He did not ask to go to lunch with me, or he did not accept my invitation to take him to lunch. He said, "I'll tell you what, let's meet at the studio and we'll sit together and you can interview me to your heart's content." So I sat on a bench, which was the bench he designated outside the Story building at Paramount. Opposite me, there was an alleyway. And it was a very old alleyway. It was covered with painted bricks because they had changed it to look like exterior sets in Mission Impossible and other shows. It was a foggy day, and he sat down next to me on the bench and said to me, "You know, Allan, there are ghosts here," and pointed to the alleyway and said it was in that alleyway in 1946 that I met my friend Alan Ladd, and Alan Ladd told me that, and I told Alan Ladd that I was out of the running for the movie they wanted to cast. There were two people they were going to cast. and they were only going to do one of them in the final casting. And the two were Alan Ladd and DeForest Kelley, and the movie was oh my gosh, I'm getting a senior moment here. It was the movie that Alan Ladd became famous for. And DeForest had seen a piece of paper on the desk of the casting agent. It was It's Gun for Hire. Oh. Thank you, Mike. And what Kelley had seen was his own name crossed out on. So he told Ladd that he was going to get the part that day. And somehow watching DeForest's face, almost tearing, remembering that those days on picture there, which was also done in 1946, called Senior Moments of War. But it was hearing his stories about Carmen in those days. It was amazing. It was absolutely amazing.
Well, you probably could feel the emotion coming from D4 and how you were feeling being such a fan of the show, being a fan of the series, and here he's being very intimate about his personal life.
At that moment, I was going back in time with him.
Yeah,
this lot. The film, by the way,
okay.
where he was. It was a Maxwell Shane, wonderful script, and in that movie, he played a character who was tricked into believing that he had committed murder, and he was having nightmares about them, very violent nightmares, and it was a very suspenseful villains. Yeah. I don't know why, but that's what I guess you play one villain, and if you play it well enough, the next person who wants a villain says, "Oh, DeForest Kelley was a good villain in this movie. Hire him."
Yeah,
and he gets typecast.
It's interesting you're saying that, because right away I'm thinking of, it immediately comes to mind, and there's the Star Trek connection. Gary Lockwood, I remember in the 70s, you'd always see him playing the heavy. I mean, where he was always, the bad guy, so to speak. And and that's just one example of many, with different actors.
Yet Gary Lockwood had starred in 2 series of his own on television. One was Follow the Sun, where he played I think it was a golfer, and or a photographer, I can't remember which. But the second was The Lieutenant, which was produced by Gene Roddenberry and lasted only 13 episodes, but there were 13 very significant episodes in terms of television history.
Yeah, definitely. So there's the Star Trek connection, as we like to say on the show. I'm just going to ask you one more question, and then I'm going to share a comment. And the other question is coming from Winsome Andrews again. He's saying, are you able to work on any new Star Trek projects?
Nobody has wanted a project from me for years on Star Trek. I submitted a dozen proposals at different times to Simon & Schuster to update the compendium, other than the 13 versions that exist of it now. And they never wanted an update. I suggested color inserts instead of the very blurred black and white photos. I suggested covering each episode in much greater detail. Mm-hmm. I suggested to Paramount that they publish a series of phonograph records. Now there would be DVDs, of course, or CDs, in which they would have the script for each episode, the music and effects track for each episode, and the episode itself. And I could annotate the episode as well. And they never took me up on any of these proposals. So it's not a case of whether I'm willing to do it or not. It's a case of who is willing to buy a proposal for me and turn it into work.
Sure.
And at Freelance Writer, that's the problem every freelancer faces.
Right.
And I've done other things about the motion picture industry. For instance, Criterion did a laser disc on Forbidden Planet, in which my friend Bill Malone and I supplied the extra materials, and it was one of the first times, I think it might have been the first time before the MGM did the DVD, that anything behind the scenes had access. Lewis and B.B. Barron, who had composed the electronic score for the movie, and that had about 15 minutes of scenes that was never seen before outside the studio, that appeared on the Laserdisc for the first time.
Wow. So that's very impressive. Very, 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 very impressive. And that's a true classic, especially. And when you mentioned the score, I mean, that really stands out. And this is from Scott Anderson Keys. He's just saying the compendium and the original technical manual are icons of sci-fi. Such a huge impact on how, excuse me, such a huge impact on how we embrace our favorite films and shows. So with that, I just want to, it's, very appreciative to have you on the show, as we are with Kavita, you, Bonnie, at the convention, and having folks have the opportunity to speak with you and just, learn more about, your careers and what you have done and what you are doing. So it's very special, and it's just one more aspect that's going to make Trek Long Island very, very special. So I just
and Edwin and Rachel, see you there, and looking forward to meeting everyone and having a great
day. Thank you. I want to come back to Edwin. I want to come back to Steph, Edwin, and Rachel, just because we haven't had the opportunity to talk to you in detail. And I want to say thank you for putting this together. I mean, this is going to be a huge, huge undertaking and a huge event for the East Coast, especially for Long Island, because nothing like this has ever been done, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yep.
Oh, I can't hear you.
You're on mute.
There you go, Steph.
I don't think like this. We've had like events that had Trek guests and big events, but definitely nothing really focused on one genre like this.
Right. So this is very exciting, and it's happening next week. So
oh my God, I'm not ready to hear that.
Oh, sure. Go ahead, Alan. I'm sorry.
Can you sign me off this connection? I can't seem to hang up.
Oh, sure. No problem. Alan, take care.
He's not letting you go, Alan.
Take care, Alan.
Thanks, Alan. Thank you. See you next week.
Thanks.
Okay, there we go. All righty.
Poor Alan, you've got him stuck on the phone, Roy. He wants to watch a movie or something tonight.
It's kind of like the in the alternative factor, where you're caught in that portal
or interstitial space or something. Yeah.
It's not a hole, it's a door. But no, in all seriousness, so no, this is pretty exciting, and there's a lot being covered at this convention in 2 days, so it's very exciting. So just wanted to circle back with you just about things that you would like to share about this event, and things that you can tell the viewers that are out there and that will be tuning in to watch the show.
It's actually interesting. So I was interviewed the other day, and somebody had asked me, what advice would you give to an attendee? And I gotta say, plan. You better start planning, because there is so much going on. You write a list, write down what you want to see, what you want to do, because you'll get overwhelmed if you walk in. Because let me tell you, Edwin packed in that program, so make sure you plan, make sure you know where you're going, when you're going.
Program's creaking at the seams.
Yeah.
It's like my hair was brown when I started the program.
It's true. He's 17 years old. But
Botox is failing me now.
Go on that website. I have anything from the program book. I have everything from the schedules, everybody's individual schedules there, so you know where to find everybody. So plan like you're going to Disney World. Okay.
There you go. And just to let you know, as you are speaking, what I am doing is I am actually putting into the feed the links to the main schedule. So folks, I'm making it easier for you. All you have to do is click onto the link. It will take you right to the website, and you can see the schedule of events taking place at Trek Long Island. So just so you know.
And it's printable. It's printable. So print it out, circle where you're going. Make an action plan.
Or save the planet and use an electronic version.
There you go.
Yeah, that's better. But you know what? I get it.
Now, in regards to this now, just to let everybody know, what is the website that they should be going to in case they don't listen to me and they don't go to the links that I am sharing?
Well, you should listen. The website's treklongisland.com. Not too hard.
No, not too hard at all. So just as a reminder to everybody. So is there any other items that you would like to share as far as other guests that are going to be here? Maybe just a highlight to tell the folks out there, and I can throw up the slide too, just so you know.
Anything you want to highlight, Edwin, on your schedule? We talked about a lot.
Well, I mean, as you can see, we've got quite a selection of guests from both old and new Trek. I think one of the highlights for us is, and there's multiple, but having all of these guest stars from the original series, including the wonderful David Frankham, who I believe is the oldest living guest star from Star Trek, the original series, at 97 years young. We have the wonderful Barbara Luna and France Nguyen coming, and Sandy Gimple, a stunt lady who's still.
Oh, you got to see her book. You got it. She's selling her book. She's selling her book.
An autobiography called Stunt Lady. And we'll be doing a 30-minute spotlight on that. Tanya Lamani is coming, who was Kara in Wolf in the Fold. And she has another autobiography out. She has a couple of books she's bringing. And then...
Well, J.G. Hertzler, this is like House of Martok is going to be a really big panel.
Yeah, and Steph, you want to say a bit about the Batleth?
We're having an auction for our Batleth. So there's a company called the Klingon Shop. If you haven't ever heard of them, go on their website, KlingonShop.com. They're awesome. They donated a Batleth to be autographed and given to the convention charity. J.G. Hertzler is going to be on stage. He's going to autograph it there, and we're going to do the auction right during the House of Martok panel.
Wow, that's pretty exciting.
Awesome.
Well, the other thing is also we have Robin Curtis from Star Trek 3 and TNG, and she's going to be joined by Vad Potenza, who was 13-year-old Spock from Star Trek 3. And I could be wrong, but I think this is actually the first time they've seen one another since Star Trek 3. So the panel is aptly titled Spock and Saavik, or Saavik and Spock, the Reunion. And there's another portrait idea for Kavita. So I've got so many. Could you just draw the entire map, Kavita?
You know what?
It's so nice. It's so modest and so nice.
Sorry, go ahead, Roy.
That's a great lead-in. I'm sorry, that's a great lead-in to Kavita, because someone just posed a question, and I'm just gonna kind of put it out there real quick. Winston was asking a question for Kavita. Have you thought of creating a cross-universe piece, characters from Star Trek meeting characters from other iconic series?
So that's a brilliant idea. Now, one of the things I'll say just from the logistics of it. So there's the artist. I will create a painting for myself first. But then there's the logistics of, if I wanted to offer that to fans, then I have to get Paramount to agree to okay the fact that they're not in the same universe, etc. And if there's another company outside of Paramount, etc., that owns the other character, then I run into some problems. So those are the reasons, an official viewpoint, why I wouldn't do that. But it doesn't stop me from doing it because I want to.
There you
go. No official Captain Kirk Darth Vader crossovers just yet.
Oh yeah.
And then we also have, I'm sorry, I'm just looking at Star Trek Discovery. We've got a wonderful array of actors. We have Punzile Sitole, who this is her first convention. We have Raven Dowder, Wilson Cruz as Dr. Culber. It's Dr. Pollard, his second in command of the medical center. We have David Ajala, Booker. I love David. He's a fellow Brit, and I've met him several times. Really lovely guy. Oded Fair. Admiral Vance has not done many, if any, conventions.
Yeah.
Really looking forward to him, especially Bonnie, who has an
Bonnie, look at her.
that clashes with his stage appearance that she wanted me to move.
So
That'll-
Edwin's really on the panel just to fan her. That's the real reason.
That's right. That's it. I'm bringing my own oxygen.
And then the legendary Doug Jones, who is known for Star Trek, Hocus Pocus, you name it, he's done
Silver
it.
Surfer.
Yep, Silver Surfer. And I just want to actually, there's one thing that's very close to my heart, and that is we are having an Outer Limits panel of the old 1960s TV show Outer Limits. And we are lucky enough to have Dave Rash, who is an author friend of mine who wrote the scripts of the Outer Limits Volume 1. We have zooming in Dominic Stefano, son of the legendary producer Joseph D. Stefano, who wrote the Star Trek TNG episode Skin of Evil as well. He's zooming in. And we also have joining us David Frankham to talk about his 2 episodes, Nightmare and Don't Open Till Doomsday, I believe. And Barbara Luna talking about it came from the woodwork, which she starred with a fellow Trek star Michael Forrest. And this is a very, very special panel because I've seen them all talk about Star Trek, but never have we had this combination where they've discussed the Outer Limits. So I'm really excited about this.
Sounds great.
And of course, Allan Asherman. When I found out Allan was on Long Island and we managed to convince him to come, and I now have all my Star Trek compendiums and a truckload of my books ready for Allan to sign. I didn't get a chance to terrify him when he was on the phone with that.
Basically, this convention is so Edwin could get all the things he needs autographed.
Yes. This is okay. Stephanie has seen through my charade. She has seen completely through it.
Oh, I knew it.
Could you help me? Could you help me with this Star Trek convention? I want your idea from guests. And Edwin's wish list came out.
He went to the wall. That's
what I need. That's why the autograph lines are always so long. It's Edwin with volume 16 of something he's getting autographed.
Collection. And I think that what we've got, we're not just showcasing actors. It's not just a Q&A and the actors show up and sign autographs. We are bringing in crew, cast. We are bringing in Mike Westmore, makeup. We are via Zoom, Doug Drexler and the Okudas, all the design. Alan Howarth, sound design, and a composer as well. And then, of course, Kavita, art. I think your panel is the art of Star Trek rather imaginatively. If you want to change that, Kavita, we can, but I put that one in there. And we have comic book artists coming to, Steph could remember the names, but the guy who draws the Star Trek Picard comic is coming to do a signing in conjunction with our friends at CradleCon. So we don't just have the actors, we have lots of panels, we have podcasters, we've got our friends from Sci-Fi Sisters, Women at Warp, our very own Roy Belquist, Jim Yeager from Trek Talking, Matt Kaplowitz from Trek Untold, Strange New Pod. We have this whole podcasting track.
We're touching on everything.
Real science. We have real scientists coming.
It's funny, what we call in the education world, we call it STEAM programming: science, technology, engineering, art, and math. We have all of it. We are a STEAM convention.
We have Adina Minoya from Big Sci-Fi Podcast. She's also a scientist. She's coming in. She's brought many of her colleagues from NASA in, and it's amazing just the science track alone.
And kids programming. We have.
Yes, we must not forget Starfleet.
We're not messing around. Like my big thing is the kids need to be noticed just as much as the adults. They need to have the same fun. They need to have the same respect. And they're getting a story time with Bonnie Gordon, who's going to read a Prodigy book by Supernova by Rob Perlman in the voices. And all the adults are going to want to come in, and we're going to say, no.
and don't forget, on Sunday, we have the wonderful Joanna Ball coming, who people who don't know, Joanna Ball is a graphic designer, one of the first few female graphic designers at the BBC in the 1970s in the UK. She worked on the design of the Doctor Who logo in the 1970s opening credits. And she also did the graphic design, the opening credits for The Singing Detective by a playwright called Dennis Potter. It starred Michael Gambon, who many of you know as Dumbledore from Harry Potter. And it's a phenomenal drama, and it won the British equivalent of like the Golden Globe or the Emmy, the BAFTA.
Yeah.
And Joanna won that for the titles of The Singing Detective. Joanna's coming because she also designed Pudsey Bear for the BBC charity Children in Need, which happens every year in the UK. And she's bringing the original Pudsey Bear, and she's doing a children's story time on the Sunday as well. So we look forward to welcoming Joanna. Comes to the other convention, Long Island Doctor Who, and we are looking so forward to welcoming Jo. She's a wonderful person. Strongly recommend that you come and see her.
We got it all.
I was going to say this convention is very well rounded, so it's going to be an awesome time. A lot to see within 2 days, but as Steph was saying just a few minutes ago, definitely plan accordingly. Again, I've shared the links for the main menu in regards to the schedule, and then also for there's going to be cosplay as well. I shared that link, as well as you said for the children.
Sign up for the cosplay event. Sign up for it.
Yes. So there's a lot of stuff going on.
Just quickly, we have Star Trek authors John Peel, Michael Jan Friedman, and oh god, what's his name? Keith DeCandido. Sorry.
Yes.
As well as Rob Perlman, Chris Abbott, and other Trek authors. David Frankham is an absolute treasure.
He's
and
wonderful.
This Files, David was also the voice of Sergeant Tibbs in 101 Dalmatians.
Yes.
Can you accept the Trek Long Island challenge? Talk to David Frankham for more than 5 minutes and you will be in love.
Oh my God.
In love. You will leave your significant other in a minute.
Love.
In fact, Kavita, we need a picture of
goodbye
David.
to your husband now. He's so
He's lovely.
a charmer. He really is.
I see Linda's joining us. Linda, welcome. Linda's actually joining us from Western Canada. Welcome, Linda. See you out there. And I even get to say hi to Dennis Chevalier. He's also joining us from Canada. He was out there earlier too. So we are well represented in Canada tonight, Kavita.
Going global, Roy. Going global.
I see a question coming in. Winsome saying, I missed the beginning of this great and informative program tonight. Will it be available for viewing again? Yes, it will, Winsome. All you have to do is, what I would ask that you do is, if you have not already, go to Roy's Tie-Dye Sci-Fi Corner, which you are at if you're viewing this. And on the Facebook page, just please either follow and like or do both. And then you will be able to go to the video section and you will be able to watch the entire episode. And there's no charge for that. Just the only thing I would ask is just to do those two things, just to so that it's recorded. And and if you enjoy it, which it sounds like you are, just let everybody know about it, because we just like to share the information and just let everybody know about it. But it is definitely available for your viewing. So thank you for that.
Roy, could I just add very quickly? We have Brian got
also.
One moment. I'll be quick.
Even I'm in shock.
Brian Gottschalk is giving a talk about the construction of the Star Trek set tour from our friends at the original series Star Trek set tour in Ticonderoga. And oh god, what was the other thing? It's gone now. Oh, I knew it. You see, I was on my Twilight Zone. Today is National Twilight Zone Day.
Oh,
and author Nick Parisi will be there in our Trek to the Zone panel talking about Star Trek actors that guest starred in the Twilight Zone. So Trek to the Zone, 7 p.m. Saturday. Be there.
I'm trying to get the names of the authors that are other authors. Okay, so the comic authors that we're having, they're only going to be there during the night, is Cliff Chiang, Sean Von Gorman, Joe Corallo, and Glenn Horman, who actually is going to be there the entire weekend. So,
and Steph, did you want to give a brief recap of the cabaret?
The cabaret, we're going to have, if anybody's on the drag queen scene, Bella Noche will be hosting our fabulous Frontier fashion show on the Saturday evening. Make sure you sign up early. Jan, who's running it, is doing a 1:00 meeting where you can sign up there, or please sign up online in advance, because I think it's going to be really, really big.
And we also have Willie Yee's Magic Show, Star Trek's Magic Track. We have big sci-fi podcast or even podcast.
Wow.
The big sci-fi podcast trivia challenge, the Red Shirts Improv, and we have also late night stand-up comedy, and it's featuring some of our artists that will also be in the Q Pass show.
The Q's Pass is not being sold anymore, but everybody who got it will be getting some perks. But we are talking about maybe at the convention selling some of the preferred seating at the door. So if you wanted some preferred seating, well, maybe we'll do something like that.
And Steph, do you want to just do a quick recap of ticket price and dates?
I can do that. Ticket price, weekend pass, $50 for a weekend pass. It's not too bad, not at all. We're bringing kids. It's only $20 for a child. Under 4, it's free. So bring them all. And that's really all the prices. I can't. But I'm going to say this. There's one ATM in this place. Bring cash, please.
Yeah, it's going to go fast.
It's going to go fast. It always does. Bring cash.
Yeah.
I know it really varies the amount that some of the guests are going to take credit cards. Not all of them are going to. So definitely bring some with you.
I'm going to have to buy a new bra. Get it in, yes.
Oh. Well, Bonnie Gordon's really. Gordon. Oops, sorry, Bonnie. I just want to say one other thing. I actually want to thank everybody who has bought tickets. I know it sounds funny, but every time somebody buys a ticket, I say thank you to my phone. I do. I know it sounds really nerdy, but I do. Because this is huge for me. And this is the first year. And the more people who support me this year, the better for next year. And, I know there's going to be people out there like, well, let me wait for next year to see if it's good. Well, it's not going to be good if you don't go this year. So
I would say if you look at the guest list and you say, well, there's some nice guests there, but there's not really anything of interest for me. I like TNG or I like Voyager, and there's not too many from those series. Well, if you support this year, then there will be a next year, and if there is a next year, I can tell you we have been talking about tentative guests that we're not going to reveal right now, but you'll probably find that there will be some guests you're liking next year. So please do support us, because it's not just a convention, it's a celebration of all things Trek.
Yep.
It's people coming together,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's amazing how when you think about what started, and I mean, in 1964, my God, next year, I mean, they're talking about the 60th anniversary of Star Trek coming up in 1966, but if you really want to get technical, it was in November of 64 when The Cage was filmed. I mean, was actually started to be put together. So Star Trek is actually coming up on its 60th anniversary. That's pretty amazing. So when you think about, for a show that had 2 pilots and then lasted for 3 seasons, and here we are, and how big everything is, and all the wonderful people that have shared and been connected to it and have become a part of it. It really is a giant family, and it's an extended family. But I mean, who would have thought, 60 years ago, that something like this, that folks would be here now talking about Star Trek in this capacity? I mean, it is pretty amazing. So
yeah, that show won't last a season. You kidding me?
I mean, what Allan Asherman was saying, what was it? Episode 13, The Conscience of the King. I mean, could you imagine? I mean, like in some alternate reality, you start doing alternate universes, and where they, it's like, bam, Trek is canceled. I mean, can you imagine how many people would be affected? I mean, you could even actually, here's a thought. Let's make a movie about what could have been if Star Trek was not, I mean, you could go in so many directions because
we'd be accountants right now or something.
You could argue there wouldn't be conventions in the way that they are.
Yeah. I mean, seriously though, pop culture would be so different than what it is today. It's the domino effect. I mean, it's in that, and I'll quote an episode of The Outer Limits. Vic Perrin at the end, he makes that comment. He said they say if you moved a grain of sand on the beach, all time would be changed. And this is just like that. It's a sliding doors moment. If Star Trek was not what it was and was conceived, I mean, so many people's lives, so many people that probably would not have met, relationships that may not have taken place, and and further on. I mean, and people that have jobs and everything, and just world events. I mean, I don't know. It's kind of mind blowing.
Today, think of books. Books would not be what they are today.
Yeah.
Kavita, what would you be painting now if there was no Star
Yeah,
Trek?
Exactly. Art.
that's a great question.
Music. Think about the music too. The music, the art, the books. I mean, there's so many examples. I mean, you could honestly. I mean, it's kind of mind blowing, and you can really get philosophical about it if you. But
That's a lovely horse, or that's a wonderful meadow you've painted.
Oh, by the way, Dave Rash just commented. He's an accountant.
We know what his real career is.
Yeah.
Dave, I wasn't a chiller per se, but oh, but no. But anyway, I just want to say thank you to everyone on this discussion tonight. And if there's anything else you'd like to share before we start to wind down, because I'm going to just do a quick shout out. So please,
our wonderful talent liaison.
Yay, Rach! Yay, Rach!
Yay.
Yay!
Not so much.
Yay! And if she lives with Edwin, her middle name is Job.
By the way, just real quick, Martin just said there are so many Trek references throughout all media. Very true. And Sue just said, Roy, so many scientists and engineers. Absolutely, Sue. Were inspired by Star Trek, may not have become scientists and engineers if there was no Star Trek. Absolutely. Very good point. So very well said. So, all right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the shout out portion of the show, and then I'm going to come back, and then we'll just do a quick wind up. If you have any last minute comments you want to post in the comments section, please do so. And then you can ask last minute questions. I'm just going to share this really quickly, and I will be right back here. And let me see. Here we go. So want to give a shout out to the friends at Sci-Fi Distilled, Mike and Mary Beth. They are on Wednesday nights, and they discuss 8 science fiction and movies and TVs of the 80s, 90s, and beyond. Their next show will be on Wednesday, May 17th at 7 p.m., and it should be Eastern Daylight Time, not Eastern Standard Time. And next week's discussion to be stay tuned for. They have not announced it yet, so check them out on their Facebook page, and they will announce that. I want to give a shout out to my good friend, Bill Scorado at Country Gate Players. It's the theater that I've been a part of for like the last 30 years. And that's actually how I met Shari. And the theater is actually back in action because the 2023 season is here. They just did Sylvia, and it was a fantastic show. Their next show that they're going to be doing is Steel Magnolias. So you can go to their website, which is www.countrygate.org for information about the rest of the season, or you can visit Bill's webpage as well, which is www.billscorado.com. And definitely, if you're in the Belvedere area, help support the theater, definitely check them out. And they do great productions. And again, this is the first year back from last year was kind of an interrupted year because of COVID as well. Captain Phil was actually out there for a few minutes tonight. Captain Phil is Phil Merkel of Captain Phil's Planet. He broadcasts on WUSB 90.1 FM, Stony Brook, New York. The captain's schedule is alternating Thursdays from 3 to 5 p.m. And he also is on Friday nights from 9 to 11 p.m. So you can definitely check out information as far as what he has. I also want to give a shout out to friends Snow and Martha. They are actually local to the area. They have been expanding their internet store, which is actually going to be getting a physical presence in the Lehigh Valley area. But you can go to their website, which is www.studio1thrift.net. They are owners, and they showcase their lineup for all seasons all year long. And again, you can order from their website. It's quality, stylish, affordable clothing for men and women. And you can also receive styling tips and information updates. Just be sure to subscribe to their website. And then also, I want to give a shout out to my friend and my co-host, Ross Amico. He actually is kind of on hiatus from his show, but his show, you can check out details at his Facebook page. He's going to be doing updates very shortly. His Facebook page is Classic Ross Amico. I have to say Ross is very well versed in regards to music and classical music. So if you have folks that have seen him on the show, anyway, definitely check out his Facebook page, and he will be doing updates in regards to future broadcasts. And with that said, the next show, we are not going to be doing a show tomorrow night, Friday, and we're not going to be doing a show next Friday or Sunday because I am going to be at Trek Long Island, which I am very much looking forward to. And we will be coming back. Ross and I will be doing our 190, actually it's 192nd episode, and it will be on Thursday, May 25th, 2 weeks from tonight. And we will be doing that half an hour earlier. It will be at 7 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. And we are going to be discussing Star Wars. And it's a 40-year plus celebration. As folks know, Return of the Jedi celebrated its 40th anniversary this year. Opening day for Star Wars was on May 25th. So we thought it would be very appropriate to have the discussion about Star Wars 2 weeks from tonight on that date. So that is all I want to share in regards to that. And let me see. I have another question I'm seeing in the chat section that came through. It is from Winsome for Kavita. Have you thought of designing a poster for a specific Star Trek episode? Imagining a campaign of promoting episodes released theatrically. I love movie posters. Would that be within the scope of your CBS Paramount license agreement? I would think so. And he's posing the question to you.
Okay. So, Winsome, yes, actually, that is something that I personally find very interesting and would definitely do. And I actually think that Paramount would be completely okay with it. So the way licensing works is you get licensed by them for specific properties. And so I have to tell them, for example, that I want Star Trek, the original series. I want Star Trek TNG. I want the movies. I want this. I want that. And so those are actually put on my contract. And part of the reason they do it that way is because they don't give licenses to everybody. And so they give you specific properties that you're asking for, and you actually need to use those properties as well. So once I do work within the properties that I'm licensed for, it's usually not an issue. I will say that whenever I do a piece, that the pieces then also need to be approved, not just by Paramount, but it actually also needs to be approved by the actors. So when I'm doing likenesses, if the actor is around, such as William Shatner, so this piece was painting when I finished it, when I send it in for approval to Paramount, it actually has to also go to William Shatner for him to approve it. Then, Leonard Nimoy isn't in this one, but like James Doohan's estate will then also need to approve it, etc. So the more people you have in a piece, the more approvals are actually needed. So that's not an issue so much as it might take just a little longer to get approvals for something like that. But I actually think it's a lovely idea. There's a painting I did of Spock from City on the Edge of Forever. And I really enjoyed that episode. So they're not actually posters. Those paintings aren't actually posters for an episode. At the same time, as sometimes a specific episode will actually inspire that piece. So you can still recognize that episode, even though it's not a promotional poster for that episode. But I like the idea of the promotional poster.
Kavita, would you consider doing anything, paintings regarding the animated versions of Star Trek, or is that a different ball game? Like, would you have to get the approval, not necessarily of the actors, but of the original artists?
Right. So one of the things for me is that, as the artist that I am, is that I'm fascinated by color. So this is not a Star Trek painting, but it's a painting that I did of one of the characters from Stranger Things. Have you guys seen Stranger Things? Yeah. So hang on a second. It's right here. So I'm just trying to grab it. So if you take a look, so that's Chief Hopper. Yeah. So if you take a look, I'll just pull it back a little bit so you can get to see what it looks like. And it's It's about 3 feet tall, like all my other Star Trek paintings. But if you take a look really closely, you'll see the number of colors that actually are in his face that make up his face and whatnot. So I'm very fascinated by how color works, and as a result, doing work based on flat animation doesn't excite me as much, because when you look at the animation, it's like the skin is this color, the uniform is this color, right? And so when I am looking at an image that I might want to paint from, I'm always, there's the, what do I think of this character, etc., or the story that's taking place. But there is also that fascination. Like, I have to be kind of excited a little bit about the colors that are coming out that I see in there that I want to kind of run down the road with on my canvas. So, but from the question that you were asking there, Edwin, was kind of, there were 2 pathways to it. The first one was, would I do it? Am I interested in doing it? And that was what I just kind of answered. But the second part you kind of referenced was, does it change kind of the approval process? And I would think that it still only needs Paramount's approval, because I would think that the cartoonists, just like with Disney, I would think that the cartoonists themselves basically gave up all their rights to Paramount because they were producing it for Paramount. Does that make sense? So
that makes perfect sense. And
that's what I think about.
Well, no, I was just going to say, the other thing is about if you did a painting of a cartoon character, there's not much variation. But what would be quite interesting, presuming there was a market for it and you had sufficient interest, is to take the animated character and paint them as if they were a real person.
Awesome.
I just think that would be amazing. Yeah. Again, you'd have to pick a popular character, and just a thought.
Yeah, that'd be really cool.
Yeah, that would be. It'd be like a crossing, almost like a bridge.
Yeah.
Just to let you know, Winston said to say thank you. Just wanted to put that.
You're welcome, Winston. My pleasure.
And then also Martin asked, Kavita, where can a person pick up a print of your paintings?
Okay, so besides at Trek Long Island, where I will bring a few of my prints with me, okay, and then you can pick them up there. You can go onto my website, and the website is www.retrospectstudios.ca, CA for Canada. So Retrospect Studios. When you get to Retrospect Studios, you'll see up at the top, it says Collect. So under Collect, there'll be 2 sections. There'll be, if you click on just Collect, it'll take you to the section where there are going to be a lot of straight portraits that I've done, such as the Spock Pure Logic that I showed you guys earlier. But there'll also be a second section, and that second section is special editions. All of my horizontal pieces, like the one that I'm painting back there, are under the special editions, and there are a few vertical pieces as well. So there are 2 sections. There's the Collect, and then there's the special editions. And if you're in North America, so that's Canada or the US, the shipping is included.
Oh, very nice. Well, thank you for sharing that.
Not at all. And I should also mention, they're all limited edition prints, museum quality limited edition prints. So there are a few pieces on there that you'll see that they're sold out. And I still have, emails, messages coming in saying, are you going to run another run? Are you going to run? And the truth is, once it's done, that's it for that piece, at least in that format. I haven't decided on something in the future in a different format, but yes. So they're all limited edition museum quality prints.
Very cool. Well, thank you again. And I guess we'll wind down for right now and just wrap it up. So again, Steph, Edwin, Rachel, thank you very much. Bonnie, Kavita, thank you. It was a pleasure meeting you, Kavita, and having you all on the show. So I really, really appreciate that. And I want to say thank you to everybody that's tuned in. And if you are tuning in on the rewatch, thank you for joining us. And as I always like to say, live long and prosper. And we'll see you next time.
See you next week.
Bye. Bye. Bye.